So, Wuthering Waves 2.0 is finally out. It's been out for a few days, and I thought instead of giving my review at the end of the patch cycle and, you know, going through the story and all of that, I thought I would give you, for the first time ever, my first impressions of 2.0. It's a whole new vibe, it's a whole new feeling, we're in Rinascita now. Everything just feels different, but it's different better. That's what we're going to find out. So, just for full disclosure, I haven't finished the story or anything yet. I've just been a little bit busy, so I haven't necessarily had, like, the time to go through the entire thing yet. But I have gone through a little bit of the story, and I've been able to see the world and some of the characters. So, yeah, we'll just get into it. So, I guess, like, the first thing to talk about is sort of, like, just the initial changes. The loading screen and the music is different. The vibe just feels different with 2.0. I know a lot of people weren't necessarily, you know, that engaged with Wuthering in the overall sort of like aesthetic and vibe going into 1.4. You know, whilst it is meant to be like this sort of like dystopian kind of thing, for me personally, it got to the point where it felt a little bit disconnected from the world, right? There's something I say as I'm playing through 2.0, which I'm going to pop on screen now. Bro, just everything feels alive here. Like, I feel like this is one of the big things that was missing from, like, Jinzhou, right? It's like, everything feels alive here, and it didn't necessarily feel that way earlier. And I think that that sums up what 2.0 is, right? It feels more alive. That's, like, the big thing for me. Rinascita feels alive, and that's great, right? Like, there are so many echoes around that add, like, music, and you've got people singing in the streets, and there's gondolas that are moving constantly, and it just feels bigger than Jinzhou and all of that, right? And when you have a world like that, it makes people want to play more because, you know, it's not like oh, I'm like the only character doing something. No, there are characters everywhere doing things now, and it's just an overall really cool vibe. I really like the fact that it's sort of like, I say sort of, it's very much Italy inspired, which is really, really cool, right? Like, just, I love that sort of like Italian architecture and the sort of like the Italian aesthetic and the culture that's going into this, right? And we'll get into what I mean by, like, hey, there's some Italian representation in there, which is actually really cool to see. We'll get into that when we get into characters. But, like, honestly, all of the changes made so far, the UI is ever so slightly different, but it's really nice. The UI on the top right is a little bit different, and that's really nice, right? It's streamlined, it looks a little bit nicer, and honestly, small little improvements like that are just going to make the game even better. So, honestly, the overall, like, first impressions in terms of, like, the changes, yeah, you're getting me back. It definitely helps that we got, like, 10 free pulls as well. I am saving up for a character that we will be getting onto shortly. So now we're going to get into the story that I've played so far. So I've played about 2.5 hours of the story so far. And honestly, I'm hooked, like, already. The fact that, like, it starts in the Black Shores and it's like a natural progression. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're going to Rinascita now, guys. No. Like, there's a reason behind it. It's always cool, right? I'm always someone who's like, we need a reason to be going somewhere, and we need to be, like, doing something for a purpose, not just because we're going to a new world and that's exciting. Star Rail does this really well in the sense of, like, hey, you know, we're trailblazers, so that's what we have to do, and there's usually a Stellaron and whatnot, so there's, like, a plot reason to be there, and then, like, there's, like, 7 B plots that allow you to have, like, 7 patches in one world. With Rinascita, and with especially with Wuthering, the only time that has felt like going somewhere has been, like, incredibly important. Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair with Wuthering, because, like, you know, when we went to Mount Firmament, that was for a reason, because we had to find Jinji, and then when we went to the Black Shores, well, that's obvious because we were told by Jue that Rover's past is linked to the Black Shores. So, Wuthering and Kuro are very good at just making sure that when we go somewhere, it's not just because we're going somewhere. It's because there's actual plot relevance, and it's mainly to serve the story of Rover, right? Like, that's kind of like the big thing, and then we get introduced to all of these, like, B-plots and whatnot as we go, and there's usually, like, a main conflict, which I have my predictions for as I was playing, so let's get the clips up once again. Okay, so I'm going to say this now before we continue any further, right? And before people go, oh, you've already seen the story. So, we know that Phoebe has very similar colours to Order, pretty much like the exact same thing. I'm going to assume that she's a member of this Order thing, but maybe she doesn't want to be? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe that's going to be the thing. I like the fact that all of the new characters have been introduced in, like, different ways. Like, for example, Brant and Rosia is because we were traveling through, the seas, and they just so happened to help us out when a giant, like, narwhal attacks us, right? Phoebe is introduced as sort of a tour guide, more so like a lore explainer in a way. She's a member of the Order. Yep, that's right, we've got another Order scenario here. And, like, you know, she sort of helps sort of guide us. Zani is sort of like our tour guide, but also like our, I don't want to say assistant, but she's there to help us because of the Montelli family. And speaking of the Montelli family, Carlotta hasn't, at the time that I'm, like, doing this, hasn't, like, properly been introduced yet, but I know it's Carlotta because she's on the banner and all of that, right? But, like, yeah. I do think that the story is going to be good. Obviously, it's a 0.0 patch, so, like, it's a lot of explaining and exposition, and here's what we're doing in this world, and here's this, like, new thing, and here's the plot, and we're going to probably get to the end of the plot at some point in 2.0, but it's going to be a long one because it's setting the tone, right? And I think from, if you look at the 1.0 beginning and the 2.0 beginning, the difference is night and day. When I was first playing through 1.0, I think, like, the hardest part of getting into Wuthering and getting into, like, Act 4, Act 5, Act 6 was playing through Acts 1, 2, and 3. And immediately, pretty much, like, almost at the beginning, because I don't really count the prologue, because that's just getting to Rinascita, right? And they have to have that, because if we just went to Rinascita, then what's the point? When we actually get in there in Act 1, we immediately get, like, the Order story. We're introduced to Brant and Rosia in the prologue. We meet Phoebe. We've got the Carlotta teases. Zani's there. We've got a conflict already. And a lot of it links into these characters in the world, right? So, like, even, like, NPCs that we talk to have a role in the story at the moment. It's all well blended together. Whereas with, like, Acts 1, 2, and 3, I don't fully remember too much of 1.0, I will be honest with you. A lot of it was Yang Yang, Chija, Baija, and then a little bit of Jinzi, Sanhua, Chongli was there for, like, 2 seconds. And, like, a lot of it was just characters that you can pull. Now, maybe some of these NPCs, I don't know, right? Maybe, I don't know. I doubt it, because if they're, like, store owners, then, like, that's, it's a tricky thing. But the fact that they're making the world feel more alive and having even not, like, NPCs play, like, a big part in the plot. So, like, you've got the Pioneer Association guy, Full Mean, I believe. Again, names are going to escape me a little bit unless I've seen them like 60 times, so just bear with me here. It's just a lot of stuff that helps it feel alive, right? And I haven't even gotten into, like, the meat and potatoes of the plot yet, and I don't want to spoil anything just in case you haven't started playing it yet, but from what I have played, if we keep the same tone and maybe go a little bit more serious, which, you know, Wuthering has been known to do with ones like 1.1, 1.3, kind of 1.4, and the end of 1.0, then, like, this is gonna cook. Trust me, this is gonna cook. There are gonna be fun moments, but there needs to be that tonal shift where it's like, okay, everything's been exposed and now it's time for, like, the big revelation kind of deal. And now we're gonna get into the thing that everybody probably cares about the most. So originally, I should have written this down, but originally I rated these characters off of just their appearance, and now I get to, with just a little bit of their character, rate them a little bit more again. And I also get to give you my thoughts on how they were because I actually ended up recording a lot of this. So yeah, so we're going to start off with Brant. Now Brant is still S tier, I don't care. Brant is still really, really cool, and honestly, I am very happy to say that I will be going all in for Brant. We're talking the character and the weapon. I don't care, because I know for a fact I'm going to have enough pulls to get him and then also the other characters I want. Trust me, I'm going to make it work. Believe me, believe me. I was a little bit worried when he first appeared, because his voice and his character were going to be make or break, right? If he was like too Captain Jack Sparrow-y kind of pirate, I maybe wouldn't have liked him as much. But he's sort of like this jovial fool pirate, right? Like he's got like the extravagance and the luxury of sort of like a 1600s kind of character, but he still feels like he fits in with the world, right? Rinascita is all about life and performance and carnival, right? And Brant feels like he fits that really well, whilst also being his own character, right? He's got this troop of fools, the Fools Troop. And as I said, fools. Hey. If you know me, you know I like me some fools. I feel like as the story goes on, because Brant has kind of left the story for a second, but I'm sure he'll be back eventually. I feel like Brant is going to become one of my favorite characters and could even be my favorite character. It's going to be difficult to beat Chang-Li just because, at first her design was incredible, and then her companion quest came along, and my god, that companion quest is like second to none. So Brant has a very difficult road to climb if he wants to be my favorite character, but he might be second after this. I don't know, we'll see. Rosia, so I said that I thought Rosia was okay. I think I put her in A tier. I'll pop it up on screen so that you know, so you guys know. From the small little snippet that we've heard of Rosia, we haven't seen her yet, or at least I haven't yet. She is going to be a really funny character. I feel like this is going to be an Alto Encore situation where I was like, on like Rosia and Encore, but because Brant is so cool, and because he interacts with Rosia a lot, I feel like their dynamic is going to make me a fan of Rosia. I feel like she's really interesting. I've yet to actually, again, really get to know her character, but she seems quite interesting. I think I'm still going to put her in A tier. That might change. That might change. Phoebe. So Phoebe was the one I was the most critical on, but when I first saw her modeling game, it's one of those things where I feel like her design didn't translate as well to me on, like, in the artwork form, but her model's really cool. The fact that she, at the moment, is the only character, like, main character with an American accent actually makes her feel unique, right? Like, at first I was worried she was going to be just, like, one of those, like, characters that people really like, but I was never going to really get. But, you know, you've got Brant, who's British. You've got Rosia, who hasn't really spoken all that much. You've got Zani, who we will get onto. Carlotta is voiced by the voice actor of Shadowheart. And Phoebe is American, which immediately makes her feel different in a world with a ton of accents now, right? Like, it's really, really cool. I think Phoebe might be one of my favorite characters. I'm not gonna lie. I think Phoebe might get quite high up on the tier list. She was a B. She might be like an A, maybe even an S tier for me. I have my predictions for her in the story, and I don't want to give anything away just yet, okay? I don't want to say anything that might sway you into thinking I've played more of the story than I have. We're going to get into Carlotta. So we haven't seen a lot of her, but what we have seen implies that there's something going on. There's something going on. I can't quite put my finger on it. I think Carlotta knows that something's not quite right, and so we are there because Carlotta needs something sorted. And I think that's it. Her voice acting is so good. I mean, it's Shadowheart, right? Like, come on now, right? When you've got a voice actor who did a voice in Baldur's Gate 3, naturally it's going to be good. And I genuinely think that if they can keep up this level of voice acting quality, Wuthering is going to be one of those games that's remembered for really good voice acting. I really do think that, right? Like, genuinely. I think they have knocked it out of the park with these 5 characters. I really do, right? I know some people are going to go, Phoebe being American, it's fine, right? Because like I said, it makes her feel unique in a sea of a lot of accents. So, again, there's not much to say about Carlotta. I still think she's A tier. I think her design's really good in-game. I'm not going to pull for her. How on earth does anybody expect me to pull for Carlotta when Brant and Zani exist? But then we get on to Zani, and look, right, I had my thoughts, and I won't lie, I did kind of not get spoiled. I deliberately looked for what her voice was going to be like, because I was like, this is going to be a make or break. I heard one line, and I was like, okay, alright. And then I go into the game, and she has an Italian accent, and I'm just there like, yes, sir. Finally, man! Like, do not get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. I understand why certain companies have just American voices for every character, regardless of how they look or whatever. Might be cheaper, might just be more convenient. But my god, having an Italian accent in Rinascita, it just works. And it's so good. Zani's voice is genuinely incredible. Like, usually I'm like, yeah, I'm half listening, mainly reading the dialogue, right? Because, like, you know, you have to read to really get the subtext of what's going on. Zani's, I'm listening and reading at the same time. Same with, like, Brant's, right? Like, Chong Li's voice was great too. But Zani's is so unique. It's the Lumi effect, right? Lumi was Scottish, and I was like, oh my god, that's so sick. Zani's voice being Italian is incredible. The Mask Maker having a French accent, it's unique, right? Like, and that's what I want. I just want uniqueness in a video game. I know having an Italian accent in a video game is not unique, but in, like, these games, in these gacha games, that's rare, man. Like, maybe I'm missing an absolute layup of a character, but I can't remember the last time that I heard an accent and went, that's not just American or English. Zani is great as well. Her design, I put her in S tier. Yeah, that's gonna stay the same. I'm definitely hoping to get Brant's weapon, and then Zani. That's what we're hoping for. I was going to go all in on Brant, and by all in, I mean you use all of your summons up to get as many copies of them and their weapon, like I did with Chong Li, right? But the call of Zani, man. Like, when I tell you, I was stunned when I, like, first encountered Zani. I was like, alright, I get it now. I already got it, but I get it now. Like, Zani's great, man. Like, I really like her character. She will still be professional, but you can just tell that she is like, I'm done with this. I want no part in this, and I just want to go on holiday. And you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. So, honestly, this was me, let's just be real here, glazing 2.0 for a little bit of time. Honestly, I'm enjoying it so far, and I cannot wait to play it again. You know, it's the joys of making content, right? I've kind of got to, like, juggle playing the game and making content around the game, right? Because, you know, it'd be what it be. But let me know your thoughts, and, hey, you know, if you want to see some of my, like, earlier Wuthering Waves reviews, they'll be right here. And if you want to see any other videos, they'll be right here. See ya!